Hello everyone, welcome back to Ferrari FXS. This is Jeff again, and today what we're going to be doing is we're going to remove the cams so we can change these seals here on the cams. But before we do that, just going to notate that all the parts here that we're using are from Fur Parts, and if you got need anything, please contact Fur Parts. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to do is we're going to remove all these caps, and if you noticed, these caps are numbered. Each location is specific. So like this has a 6 here, and that has a 6. This is a 7, 7, and so on. Each location has its place. So try not to get these confused. Make sure they get back in the same location. And what I'm going to do here though is I'm kind of take note when I take these out where the position of the cam is, and I'm going to try to get the cam as close as possible to the location that it's in. They're all pretty close to the marks here, as you can see. So I'm going to try, when I put them back in, I'm going to try to get them as close as possible so you don't have to move them too much when you're putting them back in. I mean, no big deal, but it just makes things easier. Same over here, because they have moved. Like this one here has moved quite a bit. So this one probably the same. It's way over here. It's on the top side over here. So they're going to go like to the path of least resistance. So if it's on a cam lobe, it's going to relieve itself. And then also, when you're putting the cams back in, they're going to want to like follow the path of least resistance. So they're not going to want to be on a lobe. So it'll make it harder on you if it's, you know, the cams are down on the lobe pushing the valve out. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so we have our new seals laid out here. You can see these O-rings here. And then these are like a garlock seal is what I call these. We got a new set of those also. And then we're going to use a number 10 millimeter socket to remove the cams. And like I said, try to remember those caps are specific to that location and they are marked. So hopefully your case is marked also. If it's not, like I said, pay attention to that, because those really have to go back in the same location. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and start breaking these cams loose so we can change these seals. All right, so I've got these blocks removed. Okay, so they're all removed, and I've kind of laid them out here on the ground in the order that they are. And then the nuts and washers, doesn't matter. They can go in any location. They're all the same. But once you break this loose, you pull the cam out and try not to rub these flats, these shiny areas here, the journals, I guess you want to say that, or whatever, against the threads. You don't want to nick these up, so be careful there. So you just want to pull it out, and then this piece here has to slide back. It can't go forward, so they got to slide back off the cam, and then take that piece, and I'll show you here in a second. And then also, I've just removed this piece, okay? So you noticed that here's your timing mark on it. That will go up. And then it has on the inside here, it has this little area here where oil is flowing through there and returning. Actually, it's a return back into the case whenever the oil is sloshing around in your motor. So make sure that is at the bottom here, and that lines up with a hole inside the cast, inside the head here. So just make sure that all lines up when you're putting this back together. So right now I'm just going to go over here and change these out. So there's your seals, and then like I said, I'm just going to push those out and then put them back in. All right, so I've got the seals changed now. Like I said, I didn't show you that because it's hard to film and press them out. But anyway, I got the new O-rings on here. The new, like I said, like Garlock seals, all installed. And I believe these are all the same. I don't believe there's any differences, but like I said, still you might want to leave those in the same position that you removed them in. Here are the other seals, the old seals. So just make sure you clean up, like this had some sealant on it. So make sure you clean up the sealant around this inner edge really well so you don't get any leaks. And then, like I said, at this point, we're going to go ahead and reinstall all these back on the cams. And you might want to put a little oil on this O-ring before you install it. It's just good practice to do on all O-rings. So I'm going to put a little bit of engine oil on them before I reinstall it. All right, so I've got the caps all back on. And like I said, when you're tightening these down, I said try to get your mark here as close as you can to the timing mark. Because when we remove this, or remove the belt, these all lined up. So you try to, like, so you don't have to move it too much. Try to get the line as close as possible. If the cam's on a lobe, it's going to move one way or the other. So it's almost going to be impossible to keep that lined up. So just get it as close as possible. Also, before you put the caps on, just make sure there's no debris in the valleys on the caps, any of the flat areas, the journals. Just make sure it's all clean in there. Also, what I did is I kind of like worked my way slowly inboard to outboard, kind of alternating back and forth on these. Try not to, you don't want to tighten one cap on just the one end. You kind of want to work your way from the center out, both directions. So just a little bit at a time, each direction. Also, don't forget your timing mark should be like at the 12 o'clock position, so your oil passage is at the bottom. So when the oil gets in there, it helps drain back into the case. So you want to make sure you have that on both sides. So next thing what I need to do is I need to go find out what the specific torque of these are. But mine are all in just snug at this point. And I'm going to go ahead and find the torque, and then we'll just torque these up. Those are, like I said, 10 millimeter nuts on there. And make sure you have a washer underneath each nut. So make sure you didn't drop anything down into the block while you were doing this. So if you're missing something, you need to find it, or you can do some damage in there. Especially, like I said, make sure you don't drop anything down in the plug holes, because I've got these plugged right now to keep like washers and stuff going down in there, because if you drop it down in there and you don't see it, you're going to do some damage. So anyway, I'm going to find the torque on these, and we'll proceed on. All right, we're going to torque these nuts to 8.8 newton meters, or around 70 inch-pounds. So like I said, you want to work from the inboard out. So when you're doing this, so you want to do that with all of them, and then that should complete the torque on those cam caps. So like I said, 8.8 newton meters, or 70 inch-pounds. All right. All right, so I've completed the torque sequence on all 4 cams, and what I'd like to do just before I finish this up, it's going to be a few days before we put the covers back on, because we got to wait for the water pump and put the belts and everything on. But I would just go through, make sure all these caps are seated. I would check every one of them on both sides and see that they're nice and seated, because if they're not, you could have a false torque and have a gap in there, and then the cam would wobble around in there. So I would check to make sure all those were seated before you would leave this job, and make sure all the areas are clean. There's no debris in there. So other than that, don't forget to lube your seals. I would lube this seal and the other seal. Put a little oil on it before you assemble. That would help So anyway, that should conclude the cam and seal removal and replacement. And we'll continue on and do some other things. Please stay tuned and follow. Catch you next time.